Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on asset tokenization, the future of finance and investment. I'm Eric, the chairperson for the Technology Committee of CFA Society France, and I'm happy to be your moderator for today's discussion. In recent years, we have seen an increase in blockchain use cases and more recently, a growing interest in asset tokenization as a new way to invest and trade assets. Tokenization is an innovative approach to asset ownership and investment that has the potential to reshape the financial landscape as we know it. Today, we're excited to welcome a panel of experts from both sides of the Atlantic who will share their insights and expertise on the topic. We'll explore in 4 short segments what asset tokenization is and how it works, its key benefits and risks, as well as its growing relevance in recent years, the ongoing developments in this area, and finally, its future and its potential impact on finance and investment. Throughout the discussions, we'll dive into some real-world examples and use cases to help you understand how this emerging trend is being put into practice. We encourage you to participate actively in the discussion by asking questions and sharing your thoughts in the chat. And our panelists will be here to provide you with the information you need regarding your questions on asset tokenization. Before jumping in, I'd like to take a few short minutes to introduce our guest speakers. We are delighted to have with us 2 innovation leaders from finance. Laurence Arnaud, Head of Innovation Management and Strategic Initiatives at AXA Investment Management. She joined AXA IM in 2009 as a senior internal auditor, moved to the structured finance teams as COO in 2013 before taking over the transversal initiatives for portfolio control in 2015. Since 2019, Laurence leads the innovation and strategy team for AXA IM. Marc Samama, Innovation Leader at Société Générale. Marc joined Société Générale in 2008 as CIO for Liquidity Management. He then contributed to deliver innovative solutions to SG Securities Services employees and asset manager clients as Chief Digital Officer for 5 years, including crypto initiatives since 2016. Marc now belongs to the Société Générale Innovation Department with a mandate to explore and accelerate crypto asset-related opportunities for all business lines in the bank. We then have 2 speakers from Nethermind, a blockchain engineering solutions and research provider. We have Joël Carril, CFA, Lead DeFi Research Analyst. Joël has extensive experience in quant modeling and systematic macro investing, where he used data science machine learning techniques to help with portfolio structuring and construction. He has since developed expertise in DeFi or decentralized finance and has published several research articles on DeFi investment strategies and has collaborated with DeFi protocols, assisting with strategic positioning, protocol integrations, and the design of new products. We have Lázaro Raúl Iglesias Ferra, a computer scientist with expertise in data structures and algorithms, which earned him a place as an ICPC World Finalist in 2022. He has been teaching these subjects at the University of Havana since 2018. Lázaro began his career as a smart contracts developer in blockchain projects and has led a team of engineers developing bots to secure numerous DeFi protocols in security. Currently, he serves as the DeFi developer lead, where he recently specialized in the field of tokenization. Now, having introduced our speakers, without further ado, let's get started. In our first segment, Introduction to Tokenization, we'll first like to understand what asset tokenization is and how it works. Joël, could you please start the ball rolling and explain this?
Yes, well, in asset tokenization, you take a real-world asset, so it can be anything like commodities, art, or real estate, and you transfer its ownership to a custodian, so the legal ownership is transferred. And in exchange, you will receive some tokens as a proof of your ownership. At that point, you'll tell me, okay, Joel, it's really similar to what we see in securitization in finance. So what's the big deal about asset tokenization? And asset tokenization is different from securitization from several points of view. The first point of view is that all the transactions on the assets, so it can be transfer of ownership, it could be dividends, it could be maintenance, anything that relates to the asset, are recorded in a blockchain, so which acts as a ledger, and this information is really transparent, so available to everyone to audit, to analyze. And the second aspect, which makes it also different from securitization, is the presence of smart contract where everything is codified, or all those operations are codified in code and they don't change.
Thank you, Joel, for the explanation. Lazaro, could you please explain to our audience the technology behind asset tokenization?
Sure. To understand the technology behind asset tokenization, we need to understand about the smart contracts and blockchain first. But even before that, it might be good to know about distributed ledger technology. So in very simple terms, distributed ledger technology is a type of technology that allows multiple parties to have a synchronized and shared database where they can store and update information in a secure manner. Then a blockchain is a type of distributed ledger technology that uses cryptographic algorithms to create a secure, transparent, and immutable ledger of transactions. It consists of a network of computers where each computer maintains a copy of the ledger. And when a new transaction is added to the blockchain, it is first verified and approved by the network, and then added to the ledger as a new block of data. Each block is linked to the previous block, creating a permanent chain that is a tamper-proof record of all the transactions on the network, which every participant in the network can verify. So on the other hand, smart contracts are contracts where the term of the agreement between buyer and seller are directly written into line of code. So they are typically deployed on the blockchain and everyone can trigger their execution in a way that if the conditions specified in the code are met, the contract automatically executes and enforces the terms of the agreement. These contracts are usually immutable, so the terms cannot be modified. Then the main idea of asset tokenization is to give to the owners of the assets access to operate with them without the need of intermediaries, while making sure no agreement is violated. That is why blockchain is a good solution for tokenization, because smart contracts ensure that the terms of every transaction are met, so every process associated to the assets can be defined in a clear way, where again, everyone participating in the network can execute and validate as needed.
Thank you, Lazaro. And Lawrence, what kind of assets can be tokenized?
Hi, everyone. So which kind of assets in our industry, so in the financial industry, today there are use cases on bonds, for example, where you can issue bonds directly on blockchain. There's also a lot of work done on the fund tokenization, so how you can tokenize fund shares. There are also moves on the real assets, so really on infrastructures, for example, but yes, mainly I would say on financial assets like bonds today.
Okay, thank you, Laurence. Mark, could you perhaps tell us what is the link between tokens and cryptocurrencies and how or where they differ, please?
Yeah, sure. Cryptocurrency, they come in many different forms. But I'd like to mention two types that I think are very important for finance professionals. And these two types are coins first, and then tokenized stable coins. So talking about coins, a blockchain is like a giant computer distributed over the internet. And you have some people who operate this blockchain. So in Bitcoin blockchain, for example, it's the miners, or in Ethereum, it's the validators. And if you issue a security on the blockchain, you need to pay them to execute this process. And and this is done using coins, which are the native tokens on the blockchain. It's the unit of value on the blockchain. Now, regarding stable coins, which is another type of cryptocurrency that's very important. It's a token which value is linked to one unit of fiat currency. So, for example, euro or USD. Some examples, for instance, are USDC issued by Circle or LUG. And in these cases, so one token is linked to $1 or €1 in the case of LUG. The issuer in this case are private companies, but it could be a central bank as well, in which case we speak about central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. And these stable coins are absolutely essential to do finance and banking in the blockchain for all use cases like large payments or settlement of large transactions or money transfers. So it's a very, very important topic. And you see how the two are linked. So if you purchase a securities token, you have to pay it using usually a stable coin. So stable coin is about 100 billion USD market cap today. So it's pretty large. And last year, I think there were about 7 trillion USD transaction. So it's a volume that's comparable to what a Visa or MasterCard are doing on a yearly basis.
That's a really huge volume. Thank you, Mark. Now that we have an idea of what asset tokenization is, thanks to our speakers, let's move on to segment 2, asset tokenization's key benefits and risks, as well as its growing importance and relevance. Lazaro, could you please talk about the key benefits and risks?
Sure. There are many benefits and risks associated to asset tokenization in the blockchain. So to start with the benefits, we can talk, for example, about transaction finality, which is improved since transactions on the blockchain are typically irreversible and final, providing a high level of certainty and reducing the risk of disputes. For example, if you need a loan or you want to buy a piece of real estate, the whole process can be much quicker compared to the traditional process we know. Blockchain also enables fractional ownership, meaning that investors can buy and sell smart portions of an asset instead of the entire asset. Tokenization also enables illiquid assets such as real estate, fine art, and private equity to be converted into digital assets so they can be traded in secondary markets, and this increases the liquidity. Transparency is also improved because all the investors will have access to real-time information about the assets they own, and any external party can audit all the operations being done with the assets. And there are many other benefits in the areas of privacy, accessibility, and there might be also a cost reduction for users as there are less intermediaries in each process. About the risks, we can say that tokenization inherits all the risk associated to smart contracts, which means that there is a chance of exploits and hacks happening as smart contracts are based on code, and errors in the code can result in unexpected outcomes, such as loss of funds or violations of the contract terms. So there are scenarios that can be complex for a smart contract. For example, as mentioned before, they are meant to be immutable. However, sometimes updates or changes are needed in a contract, right? Fortunately, there are ways to implement upgradability in smart contracts, but there is a risk of adding new errors in the new versions of the contract. Another aspect that is that smart contracts are designed to be decentralized and autonomous, so they are difficult to be governed. But in the case that is needed to ensure a trusted decision-making process between multiple parties, there are ways to implement a governance system to manage a smart contract. But if the governance system is compromised, the underlying contracts are going to be compromised too. So again, there are many other risks associated to different factors, like, for example, external sources of data used by the smart contracts, because if these external sources of data are compromised, again, the contracts will be compromised, or simply the fact that there will be malicious actors trying to act against the system or trying to take profit of it.
Eric, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Laurence. So thank you, Lazaro, for all these very detailed points for the key benefits and risks. Now we'd like to understand why asset tokenization is important and becoming increasingly relevant in the economy, notably in the world of finance and investment. Laurence and Marc, could you please enlighten us on this from an asset manager and corporate and investment bank's point of view? Laurence or Marc, please.
Yes, of course. So on the asset management side, the potential, which is the promise of the blockchain, using distributed ledgers and smart contracts for the programmability, can really make it a big change and quite disrupt our capital markets. And asset managers are within an ecosystem which is very intermediated, with a lot of data silos. So we have to reconcile with a lot of financial institutions. There are a lot of middlemen. So if you think about the technology which can reduce this, obviously it could also potentially reduce costs. And for asset managers and the competition we're in, it's key today to look at those kind of things. Then there's the other aspect of the programmability, which is interesting because we can move to delivery versus payment on financial instruments, which leads to instantaneous settlements if potentially you have cash on chain and the financial security on chain. Then it takes seconds to settle. Today, it's not the case. And therefore, it's also reducing counterparty risk. It might also provide more liquidity, etc. So it's quite beneficial from this point of view. But there's a long way to go until then, and a lot of things to be quite standardized. But there's a very strong promise on that.
What do you think about this, Marc? Would you like to contribute, Marc, to this?
Sorry, I was probably on mute. Completely agree with what Laurence explained just at the moment. Just to give an additional color in terms of reconciliation, it's a huge cost-saving opportunity that Goldman Sachs a couple of years ago calculated to be around 10 billion per year for the whole industry. So overall, we get a financial system, especially for post-trade, that is faster, cheaper for the end investor. I'll just give one example. You know, as a bank, we do a lot of refinancing. So we use assets that we have within the bank to borrow. So we use, for example, European bond to borrow euro, either from a counterpart or from the central bank. And today in the financial system, we have a lot of silos. So depending on the instrument, depending on the location of the said instrument, we have silos that make moving the assets very difficult and very long. So for instance, if we have a euro bond that sits in a local custodian, at a local custodian, and the borrower wants to have it delivered, say, at a three-party agent like Bank of New York, we need to move this asset from one silo to the other, which is pretty manual and pretty error prone. And when you do this kind of operation, you do it on large amounts, and you don't want to to be late. So if you take the promise of the blockchain, and the revolution of the blockchain is to be able to transfer value from one area of the internet to the other, 24/7, almost instantly. And it's really, it's what we have in mind, and it's actually what is possible today using an MVP, if you like, but it's already existing. So it's going to be in the future, I think, although, as Laurent said, we still have work to do. it's going to be as natural as sending an email, from Paris to New York. You can do it anytime without hassle. Perhaps if I have just 2 minutes, I'll continue on one aspect, which is that there is still standardization to be done on blockchains, but if you take certain blockchains like Ethereum or EVM compatible, so similar to Ethereum, we have standards already like ERC20, and it allows you to represent instruments in a very similar way. So, we have huge costs in banks for a medium-sized investment bank like ours. It's billions of euros that we spend on IT every year. And if you think that at the target, everything is going to be in an ERC20, okay, it will take years, but if you think about this vision, then the way to process different instruments will be very much more standardized, which is again a huge cost-saving opportunity for us on the long term.
Yes, that is really interesting. Okay, now that we have a picture of the key benefits and risks and see why asset tokenization is growing in relevance, we'll continue with segment 3, the current state and ongoing developments in the field. This time, I'd like to start with Laurence and Marc. Laurence, I know that AXA IM just concluded its first blockchain market transaction of security tokens. Could you please tell us more about that, as well as the current developments in asset tokenization in asset management, please?
Yes, actually it was the second one because we started investing with actually Société Générale, I think it was 2 years ago, investing in a security token which was a bond issued by the European Investment Bank through the platform Société Générale Forge, which is part of Société Générale, and we bought this token. So it was on public blockchain, Ethereum, and it was 0 coupon and 2 years maturity. So with very little, I would say, events to manage, and actually it was the first time we were investing with the regulated funds into a security token, which means from a purely legal perspective that you invest in a bond. So it's financial regulation, but all the post-trade processes are completely different when it comes to investing in a token. You need to manage what Marc mentioned before, the cash. Today we need to go through bank accounts. There is no official settlement coin or cash token or CBDC to settle financial securities. So you have to move the cash through bank accounts. And so if you have the register of your bond on a DLT, so on blockchain technology, then the cash cannot find its asset by itself, so what is the case today. And so we had to manually instruct the cash payments, which actually brings in a lot of risk, operational risk, and which doesn't enable the instant settlement as we wanted to do. And so we did a second investment also in a security token, still the EIB as an issuer, the European Investment Bank, but this time on private blockchain with the Goldman Sachs platform. And there it's a very different story. So it was also in a different regulatory environment, because the first one was on the French law and the second one on the Lux law. And there are big differences as well when you handle this kind of securities. And so it's different experience, still very manual, still not an instant settlement. There was a CBDC for that time, because that time we were on the primary market, the one before we were on secondary market, but a lot of learning. So it's really for us experimental. We do learn only doing this. There is no financial benefit. So for our fund managers investing in a 2 years bond, even though there was a coupon on the second one, it's not fundamental, and it's not in their investment strategy. But it's a very good way to learn. For an example, when we invested in one or the other, it was around 40 to 50 people around the table, from the client to the back office. So it's quite a lot of people around this to be able to manage it. So that's why I was mentioning the long way to go. And maybe just to give another color, we also look at fund tokenization. So on the liability side, how you could tokenize funds, so it technically works. Then it's also interesting to see what the client wants. I think it's very different if you're in a retail industry or in a B2B industry like we are. But there's also a lot of potential because the distribution value chain is quite intermediated as well and not that efficient. So we see that transfer agents are working on that. There's also new commerce. For example, we put two money market funds on Isnes, which is a French platform using private blockchain technology. But there are also other platforms like Funds DLT or All Funds Blockchain or Fund Admin Chain also in the UK, which are developing their business as well on that front. Proper fund tokenization is also, I would say, in experimental stages, but it's also interesting to move into that direction because potentially, if you have also cash on chain or the use of stable coins, for example, then you can also address or have a bridge, I would say, with all the DeFi environments or decentralized finance environment.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence, and congratulations on this successful blockchain market transaction and learning experience. And Mark, what are the ongoing developments in the corporate and investment banking space?
Yeah, as Lawrence mentioned, we have issued some bonds. So now it's been a few bonds, still experimentation, but gradually it becomes more and more industrialized. So beyond these bonds that we've issued, notably for SocGen and for the European Investment Bank, we issued tokenized structured products as well. So they are listed on the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. There's one very interesting experiment, I think, that we've performed a few months back. Is the refinancing of a European bond that we had issued, a 100 million SocGen bond issued on a public blockchain. And we used it to borrow DAI, which is a stable coin. And for that, we used a protocol, or if you will, it's a program on the Ethereum blockchain. It's called MakerDAO. So we've put this bond into the program and got a stable coin out of it instantly. And we were able to refinance this European bond in euro to borrow dollar. Which is, I think, very innovative and representative of what finance can become when tokenization will become prevalent. So you can do that 24/7 every day, which is it's not something that we could do today using traditional finance. Perhaps a very good news as well, which is I was mentioning stablecoin, and Laurent mentioned as well, how it is important to have fiat currency on the blockchain in order to exchange euros or USD with the tokenized security that you purchase, for instance. So the exchange can be done. What we call delivery versus payment. So today, SGForge, which is part of SocGen, issued their stable coin, which is called Convertible. So it's in euro, and it's really institutional strength. So it's built in order to perform settlement on public blockchains, or to be used as a store of value, if you will. We're exploring other use cases as well, but they are not in production for the time being. One example about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. We have a number of clients, like large corporates, who issue NFTs. And when they do that, they need to manage coins, as I was mentioning at the beginning. And hence, they need something which is like treasury, except it's on cryptocurrency. So we're exploring use cases such as this one, to provide our corporate clients with mixed treasury, so treasury in fiat and in cryptocurrencies.
Thank you, Mark, and congratulations as well for the issuance of this coin convertible.
Thank you.
Joelle, could you please tell us the types of ongoing projects with your clients in your business?
Yeah, in terms of asset tokenization, we've seen 3 big emerging trends. First trend is regenerative finance, or people call it refi. So I see it more like ESG before the blockchain. So the aim of regenerative finance is to align the economic incentives on the blockchain, so how to make a profit or make a return, but you still want to balance and align with some environmental or some societal goals. So to make sure that you make good once you invest. So that's regenerative finance. And amid the regenerative finance, there's 2 big trends of projects. So one project is linked to the carbon offset of carbon credits. So you all know what are carbon credits, but now in this version, they come on chain and you're able to trade them, to offset also your emission all on chain. And one particularity that this allows is that you as a company or as an investor, you can have a proof like that everyone can see on the blockchain, so it's all transparent, that you have offsetted, that you've contributed well to the planet, and people can audit and they can also check the types of projects you invest in, the quality of your carbon credits. So that's one aspect. The second aspect, which is quite also linked to refi regenerative finance, is sustainable farming. So you bring the crops from the farmers on chain, and it's something that's really taking place more on emerging markets when you have all those concerns about providing a fair compensation for farmers, making sure that you got all that traceability and on your supply chain to make sure that you for example, there's no slavery, there's no like ethical issues on the crops that are brought on chain. And also one interesting innovation that it's allowed by the blockchain is that you can crowd funding for small farmers. So you're a farmer like in emerging market, you can get funding for your project, you can present it, and investors from all over the world can fund your project, and they get a stake and they get tokens in exchange. So that's something quite interesting. After the second theme, after regenerative finance, is asset finance. So it's more traditional asset-backed securities. So that could be commercial real estate, that's quite popular. Or also we've got inventories. Your company, you want to sell your inventories to investors or your receivables. That's the way you would do, and instead of the traditional way in finance. And the last trend, I think it's quite, it's a bit less serious, more cultural, I think I would say, is art. So you all know the NFTs, all those little images of apes, of funky animals that you've seen. So that's one part of digital art that goes on chain. But also we've seen some fine arts, like real paintings, which are famous, have been brought on chain. I've got 2 examples that come to mind. First example is the Last Supper from Leonardo da Vinci. So it's a painting which has been tokenized. So it's owned by various investors, and it's on the blockchain. And the other painting is The Scream by Edward Munch. So it's also another famous painting. And last, just to conclude that, is in terms of art, recently there was also a funky project which came from some crypto investors who had the idea of buying the US Constitution. So they put a bid on the US Constitution and they wanted to tokenize it and use that Constitution, if they were successful, just to decide how they would use it for public good or how, so like a bit like a cooperative that we call in finance a DAO. So that's one thing, but unfortunately the bid didn't go through, and it's the CEO of Citadel who purchased the Constitution. Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. I must say you have mentioned many interesting use cases there, especially in the refi space and the tokenization of art. And I think if we can tokenize the US Constitution, then there are not many things that we cannot tokenize. All right, so thank you all. Now we'll end up with our last segment, number 4, the future of asset tokenization and its potential impact and challenges. What impact will tokenization have on the economy, traditional finance and investment markets? And how can market players participate? Mark, would you like to give us your perspective on this?
Yeah, sure, Eric. I think it's going to be very interesting, in the next few weeks and months, because we are going to start a large-scale experiment on digital assets with the pilot regime. So pilot regime is a reality now, and we'll see actors issuing securities or financial instruments on the blockchain. And we will be able to do trading and post-trade on the blockchain. So we'll be able to enter a step into the future and see, how the promises hold. Next, I think a lot of use cases have already been voiced by Joel, notably. I think we still need to find the sweet spots of what asset will most benefit and what use cases will most benefit. Potentially alternatives, either directly, like private equity, either directly or for fund shares, because we still have very manual processes and low liquidity. So we may gain from that with secondary trading and more automated process through stored smart contracts, sorry. I think we can bet also on structured products. It's a type of product that often you issue because there's a specific economic outcome and you want to bet on this outcome. So it's very important to have a very fast issuance of a product from the idea to issuance. And we've been able in certain cases to issue that in a couple of days from the pricing to the actual issuance on the blockchain. So I think structured products would be a very good bet to place on securitization on the blockchain, on tokenization on the blockchain.
Thank you, Mark. And Laurence, what is your view on the impact of tokenization on investment markets?
I think Mark said quite a lot, so I will just add to it. I think today the benefits we see short term are more on the post-trade part. There's potentially a lot of room for the business part, and that's for the moment not the case when you look at the financial industry purely. Today, when you move into the tokenization space, if you really want to have some return on investment, you need to enter the cryptocurrency space. That's where the benefits are if you want to talk about income for asset managers, for investment managers. But then for the rest, it's still I would say a perception of efficiency. If I can just add to everything which was related by Mark, there is also the part on data, and for ESG, for example, it's starting to be quite interesting when there's an issuer, for example, issuing a green bond. If they include their data or their projects within the tokens directly, it can also bring some benefits to our industry. So I would talk more about efficiency than about business or income, potential.
Thank you, Laurence. Now I'm just wondering about new assets. Joel, what other new assets do you think might be tokenized in the future? Also, what new types of financial instruments could tokenization enable?
And I don't think it's a question of which asset to tokenize, because in practice, many assets have already been tokenized in one form or another by a project, either in a proof of concept or a protocol. But they really have very low adoption. That's the real question: is how do we make sure that those projects get adopted widely? And so it just starts first by having a utility, providing, as Mark said, like interesting use cases versus the traditional finance, the traditional real world. Just so, because for many projects, they just give you a token, and after you don't know what to do with that token. You're left with it. What do I do? I've got that token of fine now. Really, it's not really add lots of value, and that's one thing. Another emphasis will be, I think, on building like the ecosystem. So when that builds the utility. So for example, you can use this token to borrow or to vote or to get extra rewards for your good behavior. And many people are trying to use tokenomics. So tokenomics is like using the economics behavioral system just to make sure that the people are rewarded for good behavior and the people who have a bad behavior are penalized. So it could be, for example, if you successfully save the planet, you would get extra reward versus someone who has a behavior which is more negative for the planet would get penalized. So that's one thing that is being researched at the moment. And the last point is mostly like making those projects more simpler, so having a better user interface, user experience, because that's one advantage of the real world, that is the user experience. And also, we've got lots of problems in terms of compliance, of KYC. And when you launch a project, you have different laws for different countries. So an investor in China will have a different regulatory framework than an investor in France, for example. And sometimes they can conflict. So that's not easy to handle. Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. So adoption, building the ecosystem, user experience, and compliance will be key here. And well, since I'm from the technology committee, I'm going to end up with this question for this segment. What about the future technological advancements linked to tokenization? Maybe you can help to answer this, Lazaro.
Sure. Tokenization involves many aspects that are important in the blockchain ecosystem, where a lot of research is constantly being done. For example, we can talk about the field of privacy, because there is a lot of data that needs to be protected. For example, the KYC of some investors cannot be publicly available to everyone if it is stored on the blockchain, right? So currently, many techniques can be considered to solve the problem of securing the data. But one of the most interesting one is zero knowledge proofs, which is a technique that uses cryptography to allow one party to prove to another that a statement is true without revealing any other information. This might be useful to prove that some conditions are met in a KYC without revealing the KYC data, for example. So another field of research is related to the scalability. Blockchain, it's known that blockchain has limitations related to the transaction processing speed, the network capacity. So if the usage of the network increases or intense computations are needed, the execution of individual transactions might become slower and might be more expensive. So this may affect the user experience. But one solution getting a lot of traction is the usage of layer 2s, where a layer 2 involves building additional layers on top of the blockchain that can process transactions more efficiently and with less cost than the base layer. So, for example, two of the more popular ones at the moment are Starkwork and Optimism. So one more important field that was already mentioned a lot here is standardization and also the interoperability of the solutions, because solutions developed by different teams might not be compatible and might even be not interoperable, as they might be implemented in different networks. So an interesting example of efforts on standardization might be on-chain identity products, because they are trying to provide users a way to manage their data and share it with any party that might need it, meaning that, for example, users can provide this identity to any project that needs KYC details about them. So solutions about on-chain identity are proposing to have non-fungible tokens, NFTs, where users can attach their information, allowing them to have a unique on-chain identity that can share with everyone. So these are just a few examples, because there are many more interesting ideas in the ecosystem that surely can be used for improving the tokenization process.
Thank you, Lazaro, for that. There are indeed many ways to improve security, scalability, and performance. Finally, to conclude, is asset tokenization really going to be the future of finance and investment, or is it just a fad? If it's here to stay, how soon will it be generalized and deployed massively in the industry? To our speakers, the floor is yours. Maybe we'll start with Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. You know, I won't give any timeline because otherwise, if I tell you 2 years or 5 years, you'll come back to me and say, you know, it did not happen, but you said two years or 5 years. So I won't give a precise timeline. I think it will depend on instruments. What I can say for sure is that the rate of issue of financial instruments on the public blockchain is increasing, and it becomes more and more industrialized, and people are more and more familiar with this. So, you know, to all listeners, if you want to be in finance in, say, 5 or 10 years, get into it because you'll see more and more of it, and it's here to stay.
Thank you, Mark. Maybe Laurence?
I completely agree. It's here to stay. I think there is a lot of things to be done, and we talked about cash, for example. But you know, we also see a world which is the crypto world developing very quickly with a lot of innovation. In finance, we're very centralized and I would say old school. So it's accepting also that things can be done differently and that value can be shifted differently as well. And I think that it's going to take some time also in terms of change management. And yeah, as Mark said, I think you have to get into it. I think new generation have to learn from it and also think about the future jobs which will be in finance, which might be a bit different from what we have today if it comes to, for example, operational people, IT people.
Any timeline, or are you as conservative as Mark?
No, I would say if you know, if you take factual things, there is a regulation with a pilot regime, which was mentioned by Mark, which is 3 years. So started in March, 3 years, and it can be renewed 3 years. There is the central bank working on a digital currency as well, which is also around five-ish years. So I think it gives a bit of a timeline. But as I said, things can be very quick. And maybe there will be different solutions. I think the step today with the stablecoin from Societe Generale is a different solution. So we'll see also how it moves. It can be quicker, but I would say from a slow perspective, I would say five-ish years.
Okay, thank you for the number. Lazaro, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, my answer is yes. I think that tokenization is going to be the future, but I think it's going to take some time because adoption is a slow process in every new technology, and blockchain is still new. We can say that blockchain is still new. So, but what I can tell is that there are many teams working on making the blockchain a suitable place for finance and investment. So on my side, as a developer, I would love to see it happen.
Okay, thank you, Lazaro. And we'll end up with Joel.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Laurence. I think it's probably a time horizon of 5 to 10 years is probably reasonable. I think the main push will come from governments. As we've seen, they're putting the regulation in place. Like I think today, I think there was something about the European regulation about the crypto framework. Also, I think there's lots of governments who are pushing the CBDC, and one government in particular is the UK government, who already has already organized a task force of 30 people to push a Bitcoin. And also, I think recently, the governor of the Bank of England said that there was really interesting use cases like tokenized bank deposit where it really made sense. So I think it will come more of a push from the government.
Great, thank you, Joel. Well, since the transformation is going to be huge and going to become in the next decade, I think we should be sure to watch this space. Fantastic. Now we'll have a couple of minutes, around 10, for the Q&A session. Please put your questions in the chat if you have not already done so, or raise your hand to ask your question if you like. So I see some questions. Perfect. I see that there are some dedicated questions, so I will start with those. Let's start with the one for Mark. Regarding the insolvency issues we face in the market for stable coins such as Terra, what SG uses as a collateral for coin convertible?
Yeah, it's a very important question. First, I have to explain what Terra Luna was. Terra Luna was said to be a stable coin, but a very specific stable coin is called algorithmic stable coin, meaning its value is not backed by collateral. It was backed by some complex financial engineering, which made the Terra Luna not so stable after all, and it crashed in a matter of hours. And to me, these are not really solid stablecoin at all. What we used in SocGen, what SG Forge did, is in line with what the future regulation, which is MiCA in Europe, what the future regulation will ask of a stablecoin. Meaning there are a lot of controls on the issuer, on the quality of the collateral, and notably for each euro issued on the blockchain, for each euro tokenized, we have €1 backing this token. So the collateral quality is excellent. It's cash deposit. There are minimum. It's a very good rating when it's reinvested. So the collateral quality is very good. There are other aspects to it as well, which is the transparency. You know, it's going to be edited, what's in the collateral and published daily. So full transparency. And also there's very good legal protection for the owners of this token, for the investors, because the investor have a direct lien to the collateral. So every time, if it's basically they have a right to what's behind the token, which is extremely important. For all these reasons, we believe it's completely industrial and fit for purpose. You can actually go to the website, to SG Forge website. I'll give the URL, and you have a whole white paper that shows, you know, how it's been structured and what kind of control we've put there.
Thank you, Mark, for this very concise and detailed answer. So I see a question for Laurence. If you think this technology and industry is here to stay, as AXA, do you have any plans now or in the future to invest in any risky crypto assets such as BTC, ETH as an investment manager?
It's a question I have a lot. I would say there's a big difference between taking exposure to an asset class, which can be BTC or Ethereum or any others, and using the technology for efficiency gains or for financial securities under the financial regulation, I would say. From our perspective, as being AXA, it was mentioned, it's a big insurer, so it's mainly a fixed income. Obviously, it's a very small asset class, which does not present a lot of interest to a big insurance group like AXA. From our third-party clients, we also don't have many questions around that. If they want to enter the crypto space, they do it directly, or they use asset managers which are specialized in that. So there's no plan at AXA IM to get exposure to cryptocurrencies. We also have quite a strong statement from our investment platforms, which do not want to invest in Bitcoin because it's for them it's in contradiction with our investment, so from the responsible investment strategy because of the impact on the environment, which can be very much discussed, but it's not the question there. Yes, basically no exposure and no plans to get exposure directly in terms of investments, but the use of the technology itself and potentially in the future also having to hedge, for example, the gas fees on public blockchain will also be quite a question mark.
Thank you, Laurence. I see the last open question. What businesses are best in place to benefit from tokenization? How should investment firm approach it? So I think this question can be for Marc or Laurence.
I think the question came up before we were talking about which asset classes can be tokenized and where there's value. But Marc, if you want to repeat a bit what you said.
Yeah, certainly. I think there are different ways for investment firms to approach tokenization. As a user first, as Laurence mentioned, there's probably a lot of value if we can tokenize shares of funds, for instance. As an investment firm, you may invest in the actual protocols, doing VC venture capital, which is in promising projects. And a lot of capital has already flown into innovative protocols. So it depends, on which from which venture you are approaching investment, basically.
Thank you, Marc. Maybe Lazaro or Joel, you all would like to add on to this? What other businesses you all see could benefit from tokenization from your experience?
Well, following on what Marc is saying, yes, there's lots of technical new businesses who are arriving, creating a need. A bit like when the internet came, you had Google, you had all those databases who really came into force. And I think there's a lots of business infrastructure. As Lazaro said, we need to scale those blockchain. We need to make them secure. And you've got lots of protocols, a solution, as Lazaro said, which are quite innovative and can allow that. And also in terms of blockchain, some blockchains offer some services that can be offered by other blockchains. So I think that's where would be really the main use case, the main value added of those businesses. And if the tokenization market increases, as we all hope it's going to increase, I think they could be really valuable as businesses.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much to our speakers for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. To recap, we've learned what asset tokenization is and how it works, its key benefits and risks, and why it's growing in importance and relevance, the current state of ongoing developments, its future impact and challenges, and finally, its potential to be the future of finance and investment. Thank you very much to all our audience as well for your participation and questions. We hope you enjoyed the webinar as much as we did, and we wish you a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Bye.